Okay guys, thought I'd do a video to show the Retract mod and just a little bit of walk around of some of the stuff I've done with this P-47 Thunderbolt from FMS. This is the 1700mm P-47 Thunderbolt that I've converted to a D model Razorback. I've also fitted this for E-Flite retracts. Actually, I can swap back and forth. Here are the originals that were in there that I took out that are fine. They actually work, no problem. But I've made it so I can use either or retracts. The bolt pattern for the E-Flites is identical to the bolt pattern for these. So there's no changes to the holes whatsoever. However, the plastic plate that's underneath here that it sits in, this plastic made pocket, unlike the Mustang, I did have to take the entire flooring out, and you have to extend it just a little bit here because the E-Flites are just a little longer from front to back than the PTZs, or whatever these are right here, from here to here. Just a little bit, about a quarter of an inch. Easily done with an X-Acto knife and a Dremel tool with a grinding drum. No problem at all. Plus on the E-Flites you have a little zip tie holding some wires on the bottom that are actually on the bottom down here that aren't on the other retracts. They're just a little taller. The E-Flites are a little taller from here to here by about a 1/16 of an inch. Nothing that can't be worked with though. Okay, I've made these so that they can be swapped in and out of the airplane without having to pull the tape up here or anything else. What I did was I actually cut the wire right here and then crimped on the mating connector for the retracts. This was originally routed all the way up and through the airplane and everything, and I cut it and then I crimped on my own connector here that matches with here. So if I want to unplug these, zoom in here, you can actually see it. It's right there, taped up underneath the skin. I just unplug it right there, and if I wanted to swap out retracts, I could just plug this in and bolt it in, mount the strut, and then I'd be ready to go with a pair of these if I wanted to go back to them. Same thing with the E-Flites. If there's ever any problem with them, though I don't foresee any, easily unplug, just unplug it right here, easy to get to without tearing up your finish or anything like that. Unbolt them, take them out, and then I've just got the wire, excess wire. I didn't zoom very well here. Excess wire, I just tuck it down inside here in the pocket, and in front here I made a little slit right there with my X-Acto knife, and there's the existing hole, and just poke the wire up in there so that it's nice and clean and flush, and that's about the only part of it that is exposed. Okay, let me plug this airplane in here and I'll cycle these retracts for you guys. Just a minute here. I'm using a pair of Gen Ace. I'm going to fly on this plane because it is extremely tail heavy and I had to add quite a bit of weight, and these are 5500 Gen Ace 25C 3-cell lipos. Oops, radio on first. There we go, initializing. I'm using the stock ESC, which is the 85. I did put a Castle Creations BEC in it though. These right now, the BEC is set for 4.8 volts. These are a little sluggish in pulling up these gear. The gear on the P47 is a little bit longer and a little bit bigger, therefore it's a little heavier than we had for the Mustang. So these E-Flites at the 4.8 volt setting, kind of strange just a little bit to get them up and down. Let me get my radio here. Let me cycle this gear for you once. Okay, now the 90 degrees over travel, but you hear the current limiting cut off there as the retract is in the wheel well. They'll actually travel further than they are, but the stand up on them is a little perfect. The 85 degrees might come a little shy of that, and I didn't want to have to shim the servo. But I'll cycle down again, over current protection, and then they shut off. That's because there's more travel in the retract than actually is in the airplane, so I'm going to live with that. Now then, another little problem I was having, kind of hanging up every once in a while, on the door, since this is a split door design, you'll notice that the door might catch, and you notice there's no gap in mine. Let's see if this thing will actually zoom in and stay focused. I actually glued a plate on this door right here at a bevel so that this door doesn't jam up against that one and cause the retract not to open, which you'll see every once in a while. I'll do it again. There, now you can see a little better part of it. Let's get it in here. This little door extension right here at that bevel is actually where the stock door stops. And I took a little piece of ABS plastic and I glued it on here, and I glued it on at an angle. Okay, then I put some metal tape around it. Of course, I've repainted it up already, so it acts like a little slide, so that when this door comes down and closes on it, it actually rests on this. It still stays flush, but it doesn't allow that door to want to hit this door right here, which it was doing from time to time, and then jam the gear shut, and won't allow it to extend if the linkage on it is not absolutely perfect. So I made that, and it allows it to slide off, and once it passes it, then it's fine. Okay, the other thing is, and you can use the stock rods, but on the back here, let me just find it here. There we go. This rod right here, I made a new one and put a little more of a bend into it. And I need to swing my airplane around here so I can show you guys better. Okay, here we go. The gear, when it comes down, the door, since the door is part of the gear, wants to hit that rod. And if that rod right there is straight across, this gear door will hit that rod. Okay? I made a new one so that for the E-Flite, since there's a little bit different of a gap here, and I made it a little longer so that I could put a deeper bend into it to allow for the compression of the strut, so that the strut won't hit that rod right there and still keep the door attached. Real easy to make. Okay, and just play around with the length. When that shuts, that's what pulls your door closed. And a lot of times, when this door bottoms out here, you have to get the width, the length on that thing, and the bend on it just right. So if this door comes down to the height, it's not sitting high, not sitting low, and will actually close and be flush. And usually there's a gap, like I said earlier, there's a gap right here between these two doors, and they line up when it's actually retracted. But sometimes when this gear starts to come back open, since the gap is real tight, almost like it is here with the wall, this door will catch the lip of this and jam, okay, and cause the gear to jam a little bit. That's what that little piece of plastic I added on there. It actually acts like a slide and allows it not to jam. It'll actually push this up and away as the gear is coming open. Zoom in here on it just a little bit more. And it allows it to deflect that door right there and keep it from jamming against that little rod and so forth. But there's the Retract mod. I'm going to increase these up to 6 volts because they're sagging a little bit. You can kind of hear them. Right now the plane's upside down, so there's no sag when the gear goes down, but when it's right side up, then you'll hear the same thing when the gear's coming up. You get this same, you can see the E-Flite straining just a bit to raise the gear in the larger wheel. But not a real big thing. It seems to work really well. 6 volts would probably be a lot snappier and a lot stronger, and that's what I'll end up doing, is just taking my Castle Creations, reprogramming it up to 5.5 or 6 volts, and just have to remember to turn that voltage back down if I ever have to put the other Retracts in, since we have the problem with them. Anything above 4.8 volts, they seem to smoke check, despite the fact that they're rated up to 7.4 volts. Still haven't figured that one out yet. Okay, but there's the E-Flite Retracts. Modified into the P-47. Didn't have to do anything to the inside doors. You guys might want to check this linkage. I had this one stutter every once in a while, and all it needed was a half turn on the clevis to back it off to open it up a little further, and it stopped that. That way we wouldn't have any problem with that servo jittering. Stock struts, wheels. I did make a new one of these, so the door would sit in a better position. You could use the original one that came there, but you'll find out that you do have to probably straighten it up a little bit. It needs to be probably 1/8 of an inch longer, and which is what I did. Just took one and made it about 1/8 of an inch longer, and put a little deeper V-bend into it here, which also adds some cushion when the door closes and pulls it on there. It acts like a spring, and if this door wants to close a little tight, it'll actually pull it back open without straining the gear too much. Bevel piece of plastic. I highly recommend this to keep from gear jamming, because I can see a problem in flight where if they happen to get out of alignment just a little bit, and that inner door locked up with that outer door right here, your gear will actually overcurrent, won't come down, and you'll be figuring out why my gear didn't come down. It's because the door's holding it. I've had it happen about half a dozen times already, and that's what I came up with to stop that, to help it slide, so that there's nothing for the door to jam on. Once again, because these are 90s, that gear is still wanting to travel, and that's the overcurrent protection you're hearing. And we'll open them. Okay, you see the retract unit by the wing is actually sitting in a downward motion like this, okay, to sit level. If I shimmed it up, it would actually allow that to 90, but and stop that overcurrent protection from kicking in there, but it'll also stand the strut way out here, and I think the 85s would probably be too much, because what you'll end up happening is they'll still rotate down into the wheel well the full travel, but they'll only retract out here 85. This airplane's got a lot stronger dihedral than the Mustang had in it, so they may be a little better. I actually, right there's the Mustang, and I have a set of E-Flite 85s in it, and they don't exactly stand out perfectly parallel like the original stock did, but they don't over travel like the pictures I've seen that the guys use the 90s on. So it's kind of a compensation. I went 90s with this one, 85s on the Dark Knight Mustang there. So these seem to work pretty good. Other little tips that I've already posted some pictures on. Didn't like the way the stock, even though this is the way it looks, I did add a little pipe there. All that is actually Kynar heat shrink, and I shrunk it down. Turns up real hard, it's real light. Painted it up rust, airbrushed it with some plastic. Flat black to give it that burnt metal look. My camera's not the greatest in the world here, sorry guys. We'll do just a little quick walk around. Typical airbrushing, spray brush and what have you. Piece of aluminum tape put on right here to simulate panel. Pick up some of the details I've studied from some photos, what have you. Oh yes, and the hinge mod. The hinges are flapped now, okay, to give a simulated Fowler effect. And these are the hinges from Hobby King that I use. These are the large scale ones. There was 2 sets. I opted for these. I also, if you'll notice here, I did 4 per flap instead of 3. One here, one here, here. So spread fairly evenly, even though they're not perfectly evenly. I put them on these stress points that I found, and because this is foam, doesn't have any reinforcement in it, and the only rigidity it has is due to its thickness, flaps. But I've got them real strong flapping it. I can literally take this flap when I disconnect it and completely, almost literally fold it back 170 degrees, so I can almost stand this thing up like air brakes. But they're rock solid. As a matter of fact, they over traveled to the point that I actually need to have the horn in a different spot, but this still works. The nice point about these is if for any reason I need any maintenance, these guys are actually attached with an Allen screw. Let's see what's buzzing here. Oh, that's the elevator servo. Yeah, I got something hanging on the elevator servo. Okay. Anyway, I can take them off and disconnect them right here, here, and here. These are just simply C8 in. I just made a slot, used my hinge point. The hinge is actually, you'll see right here, that dark line, which is actually the original living hinge point. I just cut it with a straight edge razor, And now my hinge line is actually between these 2 points right here is my new folding point. So now these flaps actually come out and back, which stretches the wing, is a term I used earlier. It stretches the wing and folds them out and comes back. This will allow airflow to go down through the wing and across the bottom of it. It'll decrease the stall point a little bit on this airplane. With these planes having such high wing loading, it's really not noticeable, but that is the scientific principle of what it does. It basically allows the air to flow below there and keeps your laminar flow and keeps the air stuck to the wing, so you don't have a stall. Do those again real quick. That's where I got half flap. I need to redo these settings and decrease this a little bit because these are the program settings for the Mustang. And then full flaps, which is damn near air brakes, so which is way too much. Might be fun to play with once we get it up in the air, get comfortable with it. There we go. A little airbrushing on the vent scoops. The tail wheel, some tricks on the tail wheel. Right here in this joint and in this joint. You can actually if you'll disconnect these and pop these out at the hinges right here, at the little holes real carefully, not to break the plastic tabs. You take those tabs and you bevel down. You notice that when the gear's door closed, because they're elliptical, they don't want to open up all the way because they rub, and the rubbing point is at the hinge here and the hinge here on both doors. If you'll take a little grinder, Dremel with a grinder, and bevel that hinge tab back at an angle, and you can see it, you'll see what I'm talking about when you're playing with it, at an angle so that when the gear doors close and they're half round there, they actually clear that. The same applies for the one in the back, and you have to take it down little bitty steps at a time. And then I changed some of the bends on here so that when the gear doors open, they actually open a lot further than they did originally. When I first got it, they barely opened that far, just enough to let the wheel out, and then when they closed, it would close it, and this offset strut kind of helps push this door open and allow it, keeps the wheel from getting stuck. But that way the doors will actually close nice and tight, and at the same time they'll actually open a lot further. I was actually trying to get them to open this far, but that's about as far open as I've been able to push them without this over centering and this guy getting jammed when the gear hits it. This doesn't put down a lot of pressure and torque, so this has to be pretty free play in that little spring mechanism they've got down here. So if we overbend them, that causes this door to, if you get it to where it's open like this, it'll actually over center this and the gear will just jam against it when it goes down. That's about it for now, guys. There's the E-Flite mods. They're done. So now I've got 2 sets of kinds of retracts I can put in there. I do recommend, like I said right here, instead of, like I said, I just took the original retract, popped off the micro switch that was on it real carefully, and then I took the actual wire that it was connected to and just cut it. And I've got my own crimping set here, and I crimped on new JR connector, female on this side, and beveled it down inside the foam here and stuck it out just enough so that I can take this and unplug it right here and plug it back in right there for the retract. Let's see if I can get to it here. I've got it stuck in the foam. So right there is I just unplug it, and then the female connectors underneath the wing there. So I don't have to worry about ever pulling up the finish. It's basically the extension. And if the retracts fail, I just unscrew them, line my signals and stuff like that back up, plug them back in, voila, retracts are changed without having to tear up the airplane, and we always have to pull the tape up and then repaint it and it doesn't stick or something like that. This is a good way to help avoid that situation right there. Looks like I had one of the gears that got stuck. One of the things it'll do that I found out's causing this with the E-Flites here is make sure that everything's lined up. I trimmed out the door a little bit more on this particular gear because I noticed that this gear door here would jam up against the foam to cause it to kind of lock, and then of course the E-Flite senses it and then goes into current protection and the gear doesn't come down. Let's see if we can get that back up. cycle these gear down again. Kind of wish the main gear doors didn't have that big of a delay between them, but they end up changing up sequencing. Yep, see, it's kind of stuck on the foam there. It takes a little tap to get it out. Let's do it again. There we go. Okay. Since the stock struts on the E-Flite sit down real tighter next to the actual unit, it's probably hard to see in this video here, but on the inside here of the plastic strut, I actually ground it down flat to give it some gap, so that it wouldn't lock down so tight against the strut to cause like the jam you just got seeing. Though occasionally I still have it. I've been cycling these all day long just to make sure they're going to run real reliable and I don't run into a problem this weekend if I get the chance to go out and maiden it. Anyway, I'll try and get this up on YouTube and post some more later. Bye.